Drivetime. Welcome back. Today with us, we have the one and only Brady Pockington. Brady is a good friend of mine. His family is closely connected to mine. He is, for those of you who have been around me a while, you know I can kind of get on my soapbox about accountability. Well, Brady's one of my guys. He's one of my go-to guys. He also is probably cooler than you hope to be. He's a world traveler, has been to some of the coolest places you can imagine. And that's actually where we set up today's conversation. Brady had a cool opportunity to climb a mountain a few years ago. And from that mountain climbing experience, he actually found a lot of parallels to not just his, but a lot of our faith journeys. So Brady, if you wouldn't mind kind of unpacking that story for the guys who are watching today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Dave. You know, it's interesting because climbing a mountain was never really on my bucket list of things to do. I'm what you would call a flatlander. Even though I was born in Ohio, and I know we have hills up in Ohio, I'm not sure we have any mountains, but I've spent most of my life in Florida. So I learned a new term when I flew out to Washington and was called a flatlander by more than one person. But anyways, it was an experience that I'll never forget. It was one that one of my old high school buddies called me up one day and said, "Hey, you want to go climb a mountain?" This, you know, I was like, heck yeah, that sounds awesome. I never even thought about it before, but let's give it a shot. And so we ended up flying out to the state of Washington and climbing Mount Rainier, which I don't know if this is completely accurate, but I think it's the 5th highest active volcano in North America or something like that. It's 14,400 and some odd feet. So it's up there, and it's one of the most sought after climbing destinations in the country. It's beautiful. It's in the Cascade Mountain Range. It's an amazing experience. If you ever have a chance to do something like that, I would say definitely put it on your list of things to do. But so it was 7 years ago when we did this, and we had a team of, well, I shouldn't even say a team. There were about 8 guys with 3 guides, professional mountain climbing guides. And we flew out there and we had about 3 days to actually scale this mountain, to climb it, to descend, and catch the flight back. And, you know, can't get into too many details about the actual preparation and the experience itself, but it was unbelievable. It was so awesome. And one of my takeaways from this experience was how many parallels there were between my faith walk, and the actual process and preparation and the event of climbing a mountain. And I'm guessing that there's tons of books written on this stuff. I've never read one personally, but I can't imagine there not be spiritual books written on mountain climbing experiences and stuff, because it was unbelievable. Matter of fact, when I came back from climbing this mountain, I actually, unbeknownst to myself, like I didn't even plan on it, I just started journaling, and I ended up writing a message on my experience. And I was a relatively new believer at that point, so that's how deeply spiritual this was. It was a great time. And I'm going to whittle these life lessons that I learned down to about 4. Mostly, I'm going to spend most of the time on the first point, but one of the biggest takeaways I got from this whole experience was that trust and faith are greater than doubt and fear. Trust and faith are greater than doubt and fear, especially if you compare it to what's going on in our world now with the pandemic. I mean, here I am, I've tested positive for COVID. I have no symptoms, thank the Lord, but just what's going on in our world with the racial tensions and the COVID pandemic, trust and faith are greater than doubt and fear. So, you know, when I was climbing this mountain, my buddy asked me, and I didn't even hesitate. I was like, heck yeah, I'm doing that. That sounds awesome. So I had to trust in my capabilities. I had to trust in and I was in shape back then. Now I have a dad bod, but back then I was much more in shape. So don't let this dad bod fool you. But I also had to trust in my equipment. Some of the equipment I'd never seen before. I didn't even know what they called it. I had to trust in it. I had to trust in the experience of my guides. I had to trust that they knew what they were doing. And I had to trust in the preparation and the amount of work and intentionality and time that I put into the process. And when you compare that to our faith journey, we have to trust in Jesus. We have to trust in God. We need to trust in our faith equipment. What is that? It's our Bible, right? Our home groups, our church, our Bible studies, whatever you're using to sharpen your tools when it comes to your faith. I had to trust in the experience of the people that were influencing me, not just my pastors, but people like yourself, or anybody who is around me that is ahead of me in their spiritual maturity. I had to trust in my preparation. As far as my faith goes, what am I doing to invest into my faith? Am I in the scripture? Am I reading my Bible? Am I soaking, which is something that I'm not very good at? But when I worship, do I worship with my heart, or do I just go through the motions? Soaping, or how whatever you guys call it, in terms of reading your Bible and applying it to your life. And serving. We have to trust in that kind of preparation when it comes to our faith journey. So there's a lot of parallels between climbing a mountain and the faith journey part of it. But I really wanted to talk a little bit about not just the mountain climbing experience, but also maybe expand a little bit on this first one, because there's a whole lot of fear and a whole lot of doubt in today's world. And the nasty part about fear is that it corrodes our confidence in God's goodness. Fear makes us forget who he is and what Jesus did for us. That's what fear does. And if you read the Gospels, fear of Jesus' most common command in the Gospels is to fear not, or to have courage, right? I mean, if you read the book of Matthew, you'll see passage after passage about do not fear. I actually got the opportunity when I was over in Africa to do a sermon on fear, or do not fear, and it was based largely on the scriptures contained in the book of Matthew. See, so doubt and fear, not all of doubt and not all of fear are bad. So fear of touching a hot stove isn't necessarily bad. But unhealthy fear and unhealthy doubt, if we don't address it, it weakens our faith. So we remember that not all doubts and not all fears are bad, but if we don't address the doubts and if we don't address the fears, then they can weaken our faith. What we need to do is we need to look at our doubts, or our doubts can be healthy if we look at them as opportunities to learn. That's a big key for me. If you think about climbing a mountain, had I known what I was going to end up doing, like had I actually researched it and realized all the technical climbing that I ended up doing, which I didn't realize I was going to do, I don't know that I would have had the courage to go ahead and do that. So there's healthy fears and healthy doubts, but unhealthy ones are the ones that we don't deal with because they weaken our faith. We need to look at our doubts as opportunities to learn instead of, just letting them fester inside of us. One of the things we like to talk about in student ministry is an unchallenged faith is a worthless one. So when you have doubts and fears, don't freak out. Everybody has doubts and fears, right? We just can't let them sit there and fester, because all that does is it chips away at our faith. We got to deal with it. We got to address it. And a challenged faith is one that is worth something, and one that will stand the test of time, right? Most of our students in high school, all over, this is a worldwide statistic, about half of our students leave their faith as soon as they graduate from high school, mostly because their faith isn't really challenged. You need to process through some of those doubts and fears in order to come out on the other side stronger. Imagine if your life was dictated by faith and trust instead of being dictated by doubt and fear. Imagine what your life would look like. Think about the mindset that you would have if you used faith and trust over fear and doubt. I listened to a podcast the other day by a guy named John Gordon, and he wrote a book called The Garden Revealed by John Gordon. Highly recommend this podcast, especially in terms of what's going on in today's world. And in it, he talks about how to deal with fear and anxiety, which I thought was, such a timely message. And he talks about being aware of the 5 Ds, and he describes them. I'll just blow through it real quick because I know we don't have a ton of time, but the first one is doubt. Sounds familiar. The second one is distortion. The third one is discouragement. The fourth one is distractions. And the fifth one is division. So you got to be aware of all 5 of those. And so what does that mean? So if you're aware of doubt, how do you combat doubt? Well, you trust in God's glory, right? That's what I just talked about. How do you deal with distortion? Instead of sitting around listening to yourself the whole time, you have to be able to speak truth to yourself. Don't be idle. Don't let your doubts fester and just don't deal with them. You got to speak truth to those doubts. Otherwise, they weaken your faith. The third one is discouragement. So obviously encourage others, get into the habit of encouraging somebody else because that really bolsters your faith. And distractions, man, we could spend countless times talking about distractions and how it, just kind of vanishes our focus, and we need to focus on our priorities. And hopefully, when I was climbing the mountain, I had very specific priorities. My priority was to get to the top of Mount Rainier. Hopefully during this pandemic, we have used some of this time to reevaluate our priorities and try to put relationships in the right order. That's how you combat distractions. And finally, division, we need to live with the unity mindset. So as a great podcast, I highly recommend it to anybody listening. But some action steps, saying live with trust and faith over fear and doubt. It's very easy to say, but as guys, sometimes we need something tangible. We need a list. I need a honey-do list on how do I trust? What does that mean? So you can look in the book of 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 5 through 22. And I'm just going to blow through it, but basically it tells us to put on the armor of faith. So trust in God. Again, that's the 3rd time we've talked about that in this first point. Encourage others. That sounds familiar. Be a godly example. Live positively and hold fast to that which is good, which means hold fast to that which is good. It doesn't mean just take everything that you hear and believe it right away. You got to process through your doubts and your fears and really speak truth to those. And I think you'll end up finding that trusting your faith and trusting God and Jesus is going to be so much easier when you've combated those things. If you come with your armor of faith on, it's going to be so much easier. So that was really my first and biggest takeaway from that whole experience, was just to have faith and trust is so much greater than fear and doubt. If we can live that way, we're going to be way more than 1% better as men. The next 3, I'll go pretty quickly, but the second one is that we can't and we shouldn't be doing this faith walk alone. When I was climbing the mountain, so there were 8 of us and 3 guides, so we split up into 3 different teams. Obviously, there's a very tangible reason why you need to be in teams when you're climbing a mountain. And this is not day hiking stuff. This is like climbing over glaciers and snowbanks. So you're literally roped together. You have your guide out in front, and then the couple of guys in the middle, and then your anchor in the back. And everybody's strategically spaced, socially distanced from themselves, shall we say, because you don't want to all be grouped together. If there's a soft spot in the glacier, you all fall through, you're all dead. So you want to space yourselves out, but you're roped together, so everybody has each other's back. I mean, you can't have more parallels between our faith process and our faith walk than being roped together on a mountain. So, and one of the things that I found out was when I climbed the mountain, we had 3 teams. Only one of the teams, which I was on, tried to summit. the other two teams, we had a failed attempt in the middle of the first night where some guys, one of the guys' rental boots were rubbing his skin, like to the point where his skin was peeling off on his shins. He was struggling. There were a couple of other guys that frankly just weren't cutting it. They couldn't handle the weight of their backpacks and they couldn't keep the pace. See, when you climb on glaciers, this is another thing I learned throughout this whole process, is when you climb on glaciers, you do that at night, because during the day the snow melts and it softens and avalanches happen in the bottlenecks of some of these passages up to the top of the mountain. So we climb up to our first base camp, and we sit there and we have dinner. It was awesome. Views are great. It was a relatively easy climb. Well, that night at 1 o'clock in the morning, everybody gets up, clicks on their headlamps, and there's a place called the Führer Finger, which is basically just a bottleneck. Well, we had to get past that point before the sunrise, because otherwise you're running the risk of climbing in the middle of avalanche country. So we did that, and that's when our first attempt failed. That's when the lead guy basically turned around on the side of the mountain at 3 in the morning and said, guys, we got to turn back around. This isn't working. So it's super important to know who you're doing life with. Super important, because what I didn't know is that ended up affecting the rest of my trip. So we built in some margin to climb this mountain 3 days, but that failed attempt wiped out all of the margin that we had built in. So, and then it ended up to where 2 teams ended up going back down and descending. They didn't even try to summit, and then 1 team did. We'll get to that in a second. But so important on who you choose to do life with. When you think about our faith, Jesus obviously reached out to the masses, but even he knew that the only way his message was going to spread was to recruit 12 guys. And even of those 12 guys, he ended up, 3 or 4 strong with a close-knit group. So one of the things that I think we should ask ourselves is who are we allowing to influence our lives? Who are we allowing to influence our lives? And are they building us up, or are they chipping away at us? That's something I ask my kids all the time, because that's super important when in the teenage years. It's also important when you're 50 like me. But ask yourself, whoever you surround yourself with, do they bring you closer to God? So those 3 questions I think are asking points that we can each ask ourselves to try to figure out how our circle of influence and how godly that might be, and are we pointed in the right direction? I like to tell my kids all the time, you are who you hang around. That's it's a dad statement. I think every dad says that to their teenager. Or show me your friends and I'll show you your future. That's another one that my buddy Neil Volz liked to say. But accountability is key when it comes to surrounding yourself with the right people. Think about that picture of the teams on the mountain. There's a lead guy, right? There's a guy that you should have it in your life that is ahead of you, is more spiritually mature than you, is a pastor, it doesn't matter what vocation they are, but they're the guy that's influencing you to want to pursue God more. And then there's the guys that you're roped together with, right? You have each other's back, right? You're in the fight together. That's important as well, because and you're all on the same path. That's another important thing, because if you're all roped together and you're going in different directions, you're never going to get to the top of the mountain. And then the guy in the back is the anchor, and that's your accountability guy. That's the guy that's there when things go south and you fall down the face of the mountain. That anchor guy is not going to go anywhere. He's going to hold you fast. So that was the second point. The first one was trust and faith is greater than doubt and fear. And the second one is we can't and we shouldn't do this alone. The third one is that our faith is a journey. It's not a destination. It is a journey. Mountain climbing, one thing I learned from this whole experience is that it is not just about reaching the summit. It's a lifestyle. I mean, on the mountain, literally on the way up and on the way down, you end up running into different climbers. And since we were a team mostly made up of flatlanders, there were these, I don't know, I met a couple of ladies that were just bouncing like kangaroos up and down the side of the mountain because they lived out there, and that's what they did on the weekends for kicks. It's a lifestyle. It is not a destination. Getting to the top is not the only reason that, that you climb a mountain. I ended up scaling a frozen waterfall at 2 o'clock in the morning with ice picks and crampons, knowing full well that my guide at the time couldn't get an anchor in, a safety anchor in case somebody fell, because the ice was too brittle. Again, that wasn't in the brochure when I signed up for this either, but it's something that I experienced and it was amazing. I also was lowered down about 60 feet of it was like a broken ice bridge, and you couldn't get across, so you had to lower yourself down and walk around it by a belay system, stuff like that. And sitting on the side of the mountain, watching the sunrise as you're above the clouds. It's amazing. I mean, it's not just about the destination. It is about the journey. You just have to just enjoy the ride. There's going to be peaks and valleys, right? And the other thing is there's dangers too. So it's not just about getting to the top of the mountain. One of the phrases that Dave likes to quote all the time is that if you die going up the mountain or you die going down the mountain, it doesn't matter. Either way, you're still dead, right? So if you spend all of your energy getting to the top and you have nothing left for the descent, then you haven't done yourself any favor or your team any favors. It is totally about the journey. It's not about the destination. Think about our faith, the peaks and valleys. I could speak for myself. I mean, I've been on peaks, high, actually in 2013 when I did this, very spiritual experience. But I've been in valleys too, where it just seems like you're distant from God. Ebbs and flows, embrace the ride and enjoy it. You have to develop an attitude of gratitude. That is one thing that I've learned that really keeps me from enjoying no matter whether I'm on the peak or in the valley. Just be grateful for the lessons that you're able to learn. No matter what is happening in your life, you got to learn to give God the glory. And that is easier said than done. We're in a pandemic right now. What is God teaching you? God's speaking to you right now, speaking only to you. What is he telling you? You may be in a valley, maybe you're on a peak right now because you're trusting in your faith so much, and you have such such more of a positive attitude than anybody else in the world right now. You read the news and it's all doom and gloom and we're all going to die. But maybe right now as a Christian, you're like, that's not it. And I really feel strong in my faith. That's awesome. God's teaching you something about that. There are lessons to be learned on the peaks and in the valleys. And the last one is, it's one of my favorites. It's within the context of our failures that God speaks the loudest and the clearest to us. So it turns out that we ended up not getting to the summit of Mount Rainier. So on Mount Rainier, at about 14,000 feet, the mountain kind of levels off. And there's this little hump on top of Mount Rainier, and it's about 400 and some odd feet. And that's the actual summit. Well, because of the failed attempt, because I surrounded myself with people who, weren't experienced climbers, and we blew through our margin, we ended up climbing for 19 straight hours. We got to the almost the top of Mount Rainier at where it levels off. And I remember distinctly, well, let me back up. Before I went on this adventure, one of my buddies back home was just joking around saying, what would happen if you flew all the way out there, spent all that money and never made it to the top? And I looked right at him. I'm like, you are crazy. There is no way I'm not making it to the top of that mountain. Like, I just laughed it off. I was like, that's just not going to happen. No matter what, I'm going to make it. Well, we're at 14,000 feet near the top of Mount Rainier. And the lead guide basically said, we're close, guys. You want to go? Well, we were running short on time because we still had to descend the entire mountain, get into our car and drive to Seattle to make a flight out back home. We were physically exhausted. I had altitude sickness. I felt like a hangover from hell. It was incredible. Like the altitude sickness was killing me. And I was even on altitude sickness medicine. And I had done and experienced things I never thought I was going to do. Like I was good. When he turned around to every one of us and asked, do you want to continue? Not one of us said, nah, I got to make it to the top. We were just good. He even offered for us to put our backpacks down and just, take off the ropes. Because at that point, the little hump was, I guess, not a very technical climb. Put our backpacks down and go ahead to summit and come down, grab our backpacks. But I didn't do it. I essentially failed at my original goal, which was to get to the top of Mount Rainier. So, if you think about, when you think about your faith, have you ever felt like God smacks you in the face with a 2x4? And right after that happens, how incredibly focused you are. I mean, that has happened to me more times than I care to admit. As soon as God smacks you in the face and you just realize how laser focused, what was I thinking? It's immediately after that, the focus, the humility forces us to focus on what is right in front of us. And maybe what I should say instead of that God speaks the loudest in failures is that it's within the context of our failures that we learn to listen to God the clearest, because I think that's probably more applicable. God's speaking to us all along. We just may not be focusing on it. So sometimes when we fail, that brings out humility, and humility speaks just volumes on making sure our focus is in the right direction. So those are really four takeaways that I got from my whole mountain climbing experience. I would do it again. Matter of fact, my son turned 18 a couple weeks ago, and he wants to go climb a mountain next year. Hopefully the COVID things, go past us long enough that we can go out there, but we'll give it another shot next season, hopefully. And, hopefully I'll have as good of or better of an experience as I did the previous time on Mount Rainier. So that's good stuff.
That is good stuff. So let me ask you this: you have this amazing story, and I like that you still managed to work in some of your other travels to Africa and everything into your story about Mount Rainier. But world traveler, that guy. But my question is this: you gave us 4 great takeaways, 4 great points. But if you could whittle it down to what we need to do as guys this week, the tangible step that we need to take in order to, because we can't all go climb Mount Rainier this week and have that experience. But what is the takeaway that we do have that we can actually start working on this week?
Well, I would say it's a combination of 3 of these things, and that is, learn to trust more. What are you doing to bolster your faith? Think about the activities that, how are you investing in your relationship with God? Ask yourself that question first. How am I investing in it? Am I really giving it a good go? Like, don't just go through the motions. Where are you at? How are you investing in your relationship with Christ? Number 2 is make sure you surround yourself with people that will push you to become a better Christian, and force you to think about, who you surround yourself with. And then just be grateful for everything you've got, no matter what you're going through. That attitude of gratitude, that power of positivity, those, that speaks volumes. I know attitude is our circumstances can be so affected by our attitude, way more than we ever realize. So I think those 3 things are the 3 action steps that I would encourage everyone to really pursue to be a better Christian.
That's great. Hey, Brady, I just want to say thanks, for your time, for investing in us today, and just for sharing your walk with people so openly, and trying to use your experience to highlight what we all experience at one point or another. So again, thank you for your time, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And God bless you guys. And thanks for the opportunity.
All right, gentlemen, have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.